Welcome back to Visited by Voices. I am joined today by Dan from Flesh Wound Features. How are you, Dan?
I am doing fantastic. How are you doing, Lauren?
Award-winning podcasts.
Yes.
Yeah, well, it's not. It's really a YouTube show. The podcast thing always kind of throws me, right?
Yeah, horror YouTuber of the month, I guess, is
Yeah.
the official title, and you might be that for July.
Well, but stranger things have happened too.
Stranger things, but absolutely.
We do really appreciate the nomination, but
Absolutely.
We have to see if we can get our shit together. Anyway, so tonight we're talking. This is the first in a new series in which we're going to discuss obscure films that are fully deserving of their obscurity. So that's a little bit different than Obscurity Report, where we kind of highlight films that we're trying to bring more attention to. In this case, I'm trying to kind of get out the taxiway lights and drive people away from this film. You know, you want to do anything but this. And I'm not trying to put words in your mouth or opinions in your head, but I have pretty strong feelings about tonight's film, which is The Trip.
Yes.
So let me start by how I became aware of this film, and then I will pass it to you because I think that'll be a pretty seamless story. I buy a decent amount of import DVDs and Blu-rays from a gentleman who's in Sri Lanka, who supplies me with a lot of things that are functionally unavailable on physical media. A lot of films from India and from Pakistan and from Indonesia and Turkey. And he's really good to me. So I'll order films from him, and when I open the package, there's always extra stuff in it.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I've been a customer so long, and I think he's just excited that people in America care.
Yeah.
So I ordered some things, I got them in, and The Trip was included. Never heard of it. The title was in English on the cover, which is kind of a rarity. But it had subtitles, and we were ready to rock and roll on it. So I immediately didn't watch it for about 2 months because it just wasn't a priority. And I knew nothing about the movie, and I didn't even bother Googling the movie before putting it in. All I knew is the star of the film I was aware of because he'd been in things that I'd seen that I thought were actually pretty good films. And that's Yogi Babu.
Yes.
Who's a very very broad comedic actor. Although he's done some straight drama as well, but mostly he's known as kind of like their version of a Jim Carrey or Will Ferrell. You know, a very big comedy actor. I don't mean big like audience. I mean big like the personality is big. And I sat down to watch the film. And at this point, I'm going to say that I did not want the disc after I finished watching it anymore. So I made a comment in a personal group chat that you are in, Dan, about this movie.
Yes.
And the fact that I honestly probably wanted to burn every copy in existence. You can take up over the story at this point, I believe.
Yes. You were kind enough to send me your copy, and I think tonight will be interesting because I've been accused before. I have no doubt you have been too, of just liking everything because it's Indian or Middle Eastern or from an exotic land, Turkey, what have you. They make garbage too, and this is a very good example of garbage. You're a lot more familiar with Indian cinema outside of horror. That's kind of I've watched a lot of Indian action movies now and some other things, but
because they're doing better at them than we are, that's for sure.
They are RRR, which side story, had a technical issue at Crimes of the Future, the Cronenberg film I went to see, and I had a long conversation with an old guy who travels all around the surrounding area of Atlanta to see every Indian movie, and he recommended that one, which of course I already knew about. But yes, there's plenty of Indian cinema that is garbage. This is definitely garbage. Now it's interesting. Yogi Babu, I've heard of him before. I know there's some film that he did called Mandela that I know is really popular. I haven't seen it, but In fact, he's actually won a SEMA, I believe it's called, which is, I guess, like an Indian Academy Award. So it is interesting looking at him. He is a big star in India. Uh, this particular movie makes you wonder why. Uh, and I'm sure there's some stuff that's lost in translation. Uh, this is a total ripoff of Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Like,
Absolutely.
they were watching that as they were writing the script, basically. I'm like, all right, let's do this, this, and this. So Tucker and Dale turned into any sort of backwoods horror flick. I wonder, and you're probably better off answering this than me. In India, I don't I don't know how popular like sort of backwoods hillbilly horror is. So I wonder what the reception is for this film in India. Maybe they like this because they're just not used to it. I don't know, like, is Wrong Turn or some of these films, is it even on the map in India?
So I'll answer that, and then I want to back up a second. But
Sure.
so in India is very much like Hong Kong and China are, in that the government has a very strict classification and ratings administration, just like America does, except they're more strict than they're a government body, unlike America, where they are a corporate lobby. So one of the things both countries do is they force there to be only a small amount of imported Western films to the amount of domestic product. So while they're very familiar with all the big titles from America, they all got big releases. Like, smaller films might really never have an impact there. But that said, it's very weird what does. Like Tucker and Dale versus Evil is a film that they are very aware of.
Oh, it's interesting.
And we think in America, we think of it as kind of a cultish film that only horror fans really know, right? But in India, it's a very mainstream horror film. Is my understanding. Again, I don't live there. I'm not.
Yeah, it's hard to tell what hits
from
there.
what I can tell. So it's interesting because it's not the titles necessarily that you'd expect. But I said I wanted to back up a second. There was a time where India, Turkey, Hong Kong, Malaysia, the Philippines were all very well known for making very cheap and usually very confused remakes of American films, unofficially, of course. Just ripoffs, straight up ripoffs. Yeah. From about the 50s to the late 70s and even somewhat into the 80s. Yeah. That was kind of what we kind of saw out of those countries. You can look at a couple very distinct personalities as being responsible for kind of breaking that code. I think that the Jackie Chan films of the 70s kind of forced Hong Kong cinema into America, and we weren't getting kind of the rip-offs, right? We were getting legit flicks. India, because of the cultural differences, really didn't have that moment. It's much more recent. It's probably within the last 20 years that American audiences have begun to recognize Indian cinema as, first of all, the biggest film production country on the planet.
Yeah, in terms of volume, yeah.
And also in terms of the level of the productions. Those great 30s and 40s musical extravaganzas that happen in America but would never be made today are still happening in India. So it's interesting because there's a tale of many Indian film industries going on right now. Depending on the region a film is produced, it'll look and sound and feel a different way. Some of my favorite Indian cinema over the last few years, where they're talking about, sorry, drinking game can start right now when I mention these titles. When you mention Game Over or Zombie Ready or Psycho, or Mohini, which is the film I initially found Yogi Babu in a more serious role. He has some comedic beats in it, but it's a more serious role.
Yeah.
Those films, because they're not from Bollywood, they're all from different regions, mostly Tamil, but also other regions as well. You get a real different flair for what their interests are, and you're not as bogged down by the need to crowbar in musical numbers and whatnot. It's not saying music's not important to the cinema. It's just how they use the music isn't like the traditional. Everything stops. We have a music video with colored flares and
This is not one of those minimal music.
Not at all. So I think a lot of people will go into something like this thinking that, with preconceptions that they might be shocked about and being wrong about. I would just hope they go with those films I just listed instead of this.
Mm-hmm.
So Dan, let's get into it.
Absolutely.
What was your initial thoughts as you pushed play and this thing started to unspool?
At first I was, fairly excited. I knew I wasn't going to get something the level of game over from your reactions, but I was like, okay, you know what? Hey, a fun little Indian B movie. The first Indian horror films that I discovered were all silly B movies, rip knockoffs of Nightmare on Elm Street, Mahakal, stuff like that. So that by no reason was meant that I wasn't going to like it. So it becomes clear very early on to me. Again, Tucker and Dale, they just ripped it off. On paper, this sounds like a blast. I mean, cannibals, flesh-eating plants, backwoods horror, all of this seems like it would be really, really cool, but they unfortunately, they kind of blow it all. I don't know if it's the fact that Yogi Babu is a little more intimidating than the cannibals in terms of his look. No offense, big star. Congratulations. I mean, hey, you've made one hell of a career for yourself, but the tone shift too. Like it's all very silly. And then they try and actually go serious towards the final act. And it just doesn't quite work. Obviously, I don't, I'm watching this with subtitles. Certain things, might get lost, but I didn't think the chemistry was there that Tyler Labine and Alan Tudyk had between Yogi Babu and I don't want to butcher his name, so you probably can pronounce it better.
Nope, we're not going to try that.
Yeah, those two, I don't know. I didn't feel any real chemistry there. The little bit of straight Indian comedy I've watched, you definitely get that feel like, okay, you got to watch more and more of it to kind of understand the culture, which I have done through horror films, obviously. This has the typical, cigarette warnings and everything, which is so strange. Why not put it at the beginning and not in the middle of the film, which I just find an unusual cultural thing that they do. I can't...
To interrupt you for just a second, shout out to the COD for just refusing to do it. They got the movie pulled after a week, but god damn it, they refused to put the warnings in there. They're paying the price for it right now, but Warriors,
you have to stand up.
All my respect.
Yeah, you have to stand up against censorship, and I know that's much harder to do in an India, but I think this could have worked as a dark comedy, but the comedy came off more as goofy. And when you talk backwoods horror, none of the Wrong Turn films are great, but there's certain things you can do. They obviously can't. All right, well, at least we can splatter this thing with gore, which is there, but again, it's very mild. I noticed that they even censored an axe wound, I believe, if I recall, a guy laying on the ground. So that's very minimalistic. But I mean, Tucker and Dale, I haven't watched that in at least a few years, but all of the gags hit on that. That movie was just hilarious. None of the misunderstandings between the groups here really worked. And towards the end, it would seem like that kind of gimmick kind of went away anyways. So you were just kind of watching a very light, bizarre backwoods comedy. I don't know. Maybe I'll watch more Yogi Babu and think the guy's hilarious. I didn't see it here at all. I'd be very curious to see some dramatic acting out of Yogi, or Indian steak sauce, as we're calling him. But
we love you, Steak.
We do love you, Steak. Steak would be awesome. We should do an American remake of Trip with steak sauce in
Not
relief.
not a remake of Tucker and Dale, a remake of Trip.
A remake of Trip and
I
make it
agree.
work. Absolutely. No smoking
Right
warnings.
with the ridiculous 20-minute fake fight at the end.
But yeah, unfortunately, like on paper, it just sounds like it'd be so cool, and it is crazy. But the TikTok music video is pretty horrible. Yeah, this one, I don't know who I would recommend this one to. It might be good for like bad movie commentary night. I'll give it that much, but yeah.
Yeah, but it's like it's not an enjoyable bad, and I don't mean good bad because there's even bad that's enjoyable.
Mhm.
This isn't that. It drones. This movie never finds its track to run in, and it after a certain point you just don't care. You're just kind of still watching, and you're not exactly sure why.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a troublingly cheap looking film too. Like this thing looks like consumer grade camcorder.
Yeah, which is interesting. Like I don't know like where Yogi Babu ranks. Is he a top 10, top 20 kind of star there?
Well, no, but I mean, for smaller comedies and smaller genre films, he's big for that, and he does better outside the Bollywood machine.
Would he be like a Seth Rogen kind of level?
So he's not really from that tradition. Like the thing that's hard for us to imagine is the closest we have is the fact that there was like in the 80s there was like New York films and there was Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine there's 4 New Yorks making films, and then there's Hollywood, and that's kind of what you have in India. Each region kind of has their own entertainment industry now, and they're all very different in what they need to put out. This was a film that was made for streaming. Clearly, I mean, the amount of production value that it doesn't have, I just can't imagine them trying to make this a mainstream hit. Though apparently it did get a theatrical release.
Yeah, and I could be mistaken, but I'm gonna go ahead and say that this is the only English language review that you're gonna find. There's a ton in India. Again, these movies aren't covered, so I'm glad you're covering them, even the bad ones. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe we needed more of the mutant plants. Maybe that would have been the way.
That is the funniest part of the movie.
Yeah,
that's the part of the movie that comes out of left field that you're not ready for. In fact, that whole beginning, that is kind of that the animated like history of catching us up to the story now.
Yeah,
you're not ready for it to become a Tucker and Dale movie because of that.
No, that opening, I was like, oh, South Sentinel Island, I believe. That's interesting. So I was like, at the beginning, I was like, oh, you know what? I might actually like this. This might be, me versus Lauren on the show. But then the rest of the movie happened. But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd be curious to see another take on like Indian backwoods horror. We've seen that like in these other regions you're talking about, Turkey and Malaysia and so on. And maybe we have more of this in India too that I'm just not aware of. But it didn't work here. But
horror is in a really weird place in India at the moment.
Yeah. Hey, they're action movies.
Well, yeah. Well, no, but see, there's a strong tradition of action films. Even when they were kind of cheap and they couldn't compete with Hollywood, action was always very accepted in India. Horror was it's weird. It's gone through a few changes. Obviously, in the 70s, there was a big industry of horror movies being made, but they weren't respectable at all.
Yeah.
Definitely. And modern horror is trying to get its foothold. And again, when you're talking about Telugu or you're talking about Tamil language films, they seem to be getting a lot more traction there than in the proper Bollywood. Now, that said, there's a horror comedy right now, which I'm not going to try. It's Bhool Bhagahula 2. I probably really destroyed that. That's in theaters right now. It's a horror comedy. It's doing gangbusters business in India. It's not doing it in America. I think we're all looking at the trailer going, I'm not going to get any of the jokes, so I'm not going to go see that.
Mm.
which I'd love to support everything that comes out in the genre, no matter where it comes from. But if I'm not going to get it, that's a worry, and especially with me in comedy, which I'm a tough one, right? So, but horror's in a weird place in India. Like for every film that's done very well in the genre that's come out, there's a lot that have not, and there's a lot of resistance still. And I think part of that is that horror kind of challenges the traditional, the gender stereotypes, dramatic. The whole concept of a final girl who's going to take on the villains. They're very much a society where the white knight comes in and saves the day.
Mm-hmm.
So horror, by its very structure, is challenging. Which was why when Game Over came out and it was such a big hit in India and was so well respected and won awards, and Taapsee Pannu won awards for it. It was such a huge deal for that culture because it really, in many ways, was the horror film that broke through finally.
Mm-hmm.
Deservedly, by the way, it's a masterpiece. But
well, I have a solution for you: Indian remake of Pumpkin with Taapsee Pannu and Yogi Babu.
Oh my God, yes.
There you go.
I'll co-sign that right now. Miss Ricci, we want to talk to you about rights.
Yes.
She
could be in there too. Why not?
You said you didn't know who to suggest this movie for. I'm gonna go out on a limb. There is no audience for this movie.
Nobody.
Not America anyway. There's no audience here. As much as we try and be very positive on the show when we're highlighting things, usually the whole point of the show is to tell people don't, and to also kind of have a discussion about where things are, because I do think you're right. At the top of the show, you said that we're accused of like loving anything that's either obscure, old, or foreign,
exotic,
right?
Yeah.
And there's a couple of reasons for that. First off, the really bad shit usually doesn't make it over here. Again, if I didn't have a fairly underground DVD dealer that sent me for this free, I would never have come across this movie because it's just not high profile enough to translate into America. You have to be, the good stuff gets over to us. So naturally you look and say, oh, all Turkish horror is awesome because, I see the Siction films, but in reality, we don't see the crap. So Turkey is only as good as what we observe from it.
That's true. Yeah.
So if we thought that all Indian films were as good as Indian horror films were as good as Zombie Ready, we have a rude awakening coming to us.
No, definitely. That's Trip will restore your faith in garbage for sure. Yeah. But you know what? To thrive, we need that garbage too. I want to see a ton of Turkish horror movies. I want to see the worst of the worst and the best of the best. So, yeah.
And that's kind of the point too. Is like, and I think you'll be the same way as I am here. As much as I did not have a good experience watching this movie, I don't regret watching it.
No, not at all.
It's not like one of those direct-to-video films that's on the Walmart bottom shelf of the Walmart rack that you can buy for $8 brand new the week it comes out, that know you're going to regret. Yeah. It's not that. It might be just as bad a film, if not worse, but there's something about reaching for the unexpected and reaching into the shadows for things that, you have to search for greatness outside the mainstream, because if you wait for the mainstream, you're going to be waiting a long time in a lot of cases.
Well, you know what? I would rate this below, from a critic standpoint, some recent Blumhouse stuff I've seen. Yet, I probably would even enjoy this more because sometimes with Blumhouse, it doesn't feel like they're really going for it. This goes for it. It just fails. Blumhouse, it's just like, it's a product. It's not a film. And this is still a film. It's just bad.
Very bad. But we're kind of ignoring this, but when we say it's Tucker and Dale versus evil, I want people to be very clear. This is Tucker and Dale versus evil. There's no question about what this thing is. It is a ripoff. Entire sequences are recreated fairly faithfully, but with no sense of timing or charisma and no cohesion. In fact, the sections, and then there's sections of the film that I feel like there was no screenplay at all, and they were all ad libbing. Did you get that feel?
Yeah, that was. It did feel a little bit unrehearsed at times, and I don't know. I mean, Tucker and Dale's a pretty good blueprint. You would expect some of the gags to land. I don't know. I can't remember anything specific that I could point to. Well, at least that was good. The opening, the plant stuff was fun, but that's such a small part of the movie. Plus, another issue with this is it's just a little over 2 hours, which is a long time for a B movie, anyways. And the story's just not there to justify that. Yeah, I would suggest like some of these Indian horror movies, like adopt 70-minute run times. It's really fine. Like you don't need to be 2 hours. But
Well, that's a cultural thing too.
It is, and yeah.
Going out to the movies is still a big deal.
Yeah.
It's not the casual thing it's come in America. So like, yeah, I mean, in 70 minutes, you probably have people like freaking out.
Yeah, that's true. I guess I don't know if double features are really popular down there, but that's another option.
How about they just write good films and make good films?
Yeah, absolutely.
And by the way, like, I'm a big proponent of Indian cinema because for the last 5 years or so, there's been a lot of great stuff in the genre coming out of India. But I'm not like stuck on the idea that I'm going to die on that hill. If this becomes the norm, which it won't, but if this becomes the norm, I'm out of there. There's always another hot spot.
100%. Oh my God, Indonesia right now, Turkey right now. I mean, I wish we had more volume here, but yeah, let the countries compete. Honestly, somebody asked me like, well, what's the number one country for you right now outside of America? And I'm like, it's hard to say. It really is. It's hard to say one better than the other. India has the advantage on volume for sure, but
it depends what you're looking for, I think. I mean, if you want genuinely disturbing, then Turkey wins every day of the week.
Yeah.
But if you want like Corman-esque balls to the wall fun, Indonesia every day of the week, right? If you want thought-provoking but always just falling just shy of the mark, Russia at the moment. So I mean, there's a lot of places that are hotspots. India has been a prolonged hotspot because the industry is on fire. The whole industry is expanding. I not with the trip, but I go to see a lot of Indian films in theaters, and I used to have to travel to my one theater that's specifically an Indian theater. Now I have Regals and AMCs within half hour that every week are playing something from India.
Yeah, I have one at a mall that tends to get everything, but then some of the side ones, they're not going to get everything, but you will get like one or two here and there, which I think is just awesome. I mean, try something different. There's so much just standard, just crap, throwaway crap. As we've seen tonight, it's not always going to hit for you, but there are plenty of zombie readies out there that will.
Yeah, and it's not just Indian either, although India has the advantage. I'm starting to see my local theaters, admittedly, New Jersey. I do have advantages because of the proximity to New York. But
yeah,
I'm seeing Spanish films get screens. I'm seeing Mexican films get screens. I'm seeing Canadian films get screens. And it might sound like it's not important, but you know what? But pre-pandemic, this really wasn't the case. So I think if anything positive came out of the pandemic is that these exhibitors are really willing to take a chance on films of origins that they wouldn't have just recently.
Yeah.
So I'm overjoyed by that. I know it's not for everyone in the community, and no one's trying to force you to watch anything you don't want. But watch trailers for films, no matter where they came from. And if something catches your eye, roll the die. I mean, what's the worst you're going to get? Not everything has to be a Halloween or a Scream.
And once upon a time, it was pulling teeth to get people to watch Asian movies, not even just horror. I remember back in the day, it's like, Ringu, I don't know if I want to watch subtitles. But once people do and they capture your attention and your heart, you're good. I think that can happen. I will say Turkish horror, I've had the most luck recommending. And I do apologize. We got like super loud thunder if that's coming across, but makes sense. Maybe it'll add some ambiance. But yeah, there's nothing more satisfying to me being a podcaster than to help somebody discover this super obscure little movie that makes them just fall in love with it. And I know India's got the physical media issue. I hope maybe someone will start putting out some of their titles here, and you could get a case like Baskin for Turkey. Like, I remember tons of people saw Baskin. It's like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to check out more Turkish horror. And we interviewed the director, John Evernall, and there's a lot of talent over there too that we should be grabbing. I'd love to see what John Evernall could do with a budget. I mean, my God.
Of course, you don't want the Dario Argento effect, whereas he comes over here and a film, if Trauma had simply been made in Italy with the local flavor still intact, that movie would be a classic part of his resume, right?
Probably,
it feels too domestic for the voice of that creator. So I always worry, but if there's a way we could get money to them to do it locally still,
that
would be amazing.
Yeah.
So I mean, wrapping this up, Trip is not a trip.
No.
It's kind of just a bad movie.
First-time director, too. I want to be fair. This was a first-time feature film director. So, maybe you'll get him next time.
Sure. I would watch a second attempt. I don't know if the same results were there if I do a third attempt, but I would definitely watch a second attempt. So again, the purpose of the show is not to steer you towards this film. It's to steer you away from it. But hopefully, in discussing something from somewhere else, it opens your eyes to the fact that when we do come out and say, hey, this thing from Uganda needs your attention, it'll mean a little bit more.
No, I absolutely, like, I wish more would be adventurous, and that'll just take time. But, like, I remember watching the actual title is escaping me at the moment, but the Pakistani Dracula, which was just, so interesting to me. I mean, how many Draculas have you seen? You've definitely never seen like a Pakistani take on Dracula. So I don't know. Don't make the trip your friend. If you're like, oh man, I'm going to watch my first Indian horror movie, definitely don't let it be Trip, though.
Of course, that's the danger, right? We do this show and we create more curiosity towards something than it deserves.
Hey, cannibals, mutant plants. There's somebody.
It's all there for you.
Yeah, that was the big thing. I was like, I as I sit here now, and I watched this, I guess, I don't know, 4 days ago, whatever it's been. I can't think of a single joke that really hit me and made me laugh. So that is a problem in a 2-hour comedy. It picks up a little, I guess, when it gets serious, but it's hard to be really serious with Yogi Babu. But I'm going to check out more of his movies. So,
and I just want to spend a moment on that for everyone, because I get this all the time when people say, "Oh, you talk about these movies, but I have no way to find them." Couple things: A, check YouTube and Dailymotion. I hate to suggest illegal streams, which is what they, in essence, are. But if something's up and you didn't put it up, because please don't be a pirate. By all means, enjoy them. Beyond that, eBay searches will get you very far. What I'd suggest is to find out the name of some very popular films from whatever culture you want in the genre you want. Search for those, and then bring up the see other items, and you'll discover there's a lot of great dealers from around the world. Again, I deal with a guy from Sri Lanka. I've never had any trouble. I did have a disc at one point that didn't work. Not only did you replace it, but he included 3 other movies in the box to make for my inconvenience. There's a lot of these guys where the exchange rate is so much in their favor, they'll be really good to you, and you'll get a lot of entertainment that you're just not going to get from the Vinegar Syndrome sale. You're not going to get from Scream Factory.
Yeah.
Really worthwhile. From a streaming standpoint, for Indian cinema. There's a service called ZEE, and they have a ton of stuff. They have subs on almost everything they have out there. Really worthwhile. For Turkish cinema, IZE Blue is a great streaming service that has just an amazing amount of genre material on it as well. Now those both are pay services, but they're both very affordable, and you can join them and quit a month later if you didn't get out of it what you wanted.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the truth is, it's more available today than it's ever been before to explore world cinema.
Yeah. The Sitchin films, which you brought up, those are on YouTube. I believe all of them, at least last I looked.
Yeah.
So, and I think that might be official. I could be wrong. I think that might be the official way to watch them. But yeah, you have a lot of options now. Shudder. I mean, Shudder had May the Devil Take You.
And its sequel, yeah.
Yeah.
Those films are friggin' fantastic. I hate to say this out loud, and I know people have a bad reaction. Take nostalgia out of your head, they're better versions of the Evil Dead movies.
That'll be a tough sell for a lot of people, but
I know, but they're strong. They're really, really strong.
They are. They are, and yeah, hopefully more people will check these out. I'm curious what the next turd is going to be. Maybe it'll be a more fun turd this time, but yeah, I'll find somebody to recommend this to, though. This disc will just be passed on to somebody else that just feels they need to experience it. So
you heard it first here. Hit Dan up for the trip disc.
There you go. I'll send it to you. Absolutely.
Any final words, man?
Not at all. Just yeah. Did someone order Tucker and Dale off Wish? There you go.
Have a great one.